Hello friends, welcome to Third Style Garage. My name is Doug and this is
Dale?
And we're working on the restoration of a 66 Volkswagen
It's
a beatable convertible named Hendrick. And this episode we're working on installing the front clip. This is a pretty significant milestone for us because this is the original reason that we kind of dove into the car in the first place. This is also for us probably realistically going to be the last episode for a little while till we get into the fall. Maybe a bonus episode this summer. We'll have to see. Dale is a high school chemistry teacher and is going to be taking some time traveling this summer. I work at a Christian summer youth camp and we'll be heading out to camp next weekend and living at camp for the summer. So our time to work on the third stall projects is pretty limited in the summer. So let's jump in, fill you in on where we're at and what we're up to this episode. We've got 2 nights to see how far we can get in putting the nose of the car back on. Let's see how it goes. Here's where we left the car last episode. The front clip is just clamped in with some vice grip body clamps. And we're close. The curve isn't quite perfect. You can see that it kind of curves down and then goes again. Like there's a low valley right here. That's because there's too much metal on. And so we need to nest this thing in. But we are terrified that we're going to take off too much metal and then have a bigger problem to solve. So today's job, we've got bonus day, 2-day third stall this week. So we've got Tuesday and Thursday. Our goal is to slowly work on grinding this away and fitting it in, test fitting the fender, test fitting the hood, till we get to the point where we can tack weld this in. Our goal is to see how far we can get in 2 days. We've already marked a line here. We've got a decent sized gap already, so we're going to shave off a little pie-shaped piece here. That side, we're gonna take about another 1/8 to 3/16 of an inch off the whole thing, and then we will retest fit it. So you don't need to watch all of that, but we'll be taking it on and off, setting it on the bench here, the makeshift bench. And then I found that cleaning up using a flat disc works pretty well. This is an older one that's fairly worn down, but I used a set from Benchmark abrasives that they're 40 grits that work really well. They cut nicely and evenly, and I've been using this one for months and hasn't worn out yet. So, all right, time to get to it. Okay, so we took maybe 3/16 of an inch off that whole side, and right now it is we've got a gap up top. The metal is touching right there. We've got a gap here. It's touching down there. We put our rubber bushings in these body mounts or front beam mounts, these guys. So now this will sit right on top of there, which kind of helps guide us a little bit. But we are getting to that point where we got to start creeping a little bit more slowly.
And you got this too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that's another reference point.
There's a reference point there of the 2 circles need to line up. So it looks like, you know, it's hard to tell scale wise, but we've got maybe about 1/8 of an inch to go there yet. Our curve is getting better up top. So I think our next step will be to remove a little bit of material down here and maybe just a touch of material right there. So I'm gonna mark this with my Sharpie. I'm also gonna hit Dale on my elbow. So we wanna take off just a touch right there. And a little bit down there. And then and we'll test fit it again, see how it looks. We just went over our plan for the driver's side. The passenger side, I don't know if you remember from before, we took a pie-shaped chunk out of the bottom, and now I think we're lined up more square than we were before, so that's good. But we're still looking at a pretty large gap there. Our hole is not centered there yet. And then we're working on figuring out, you know, where do those holes line up? If we push, they get closer. So at this point in time, what we're thinking of doing is just taking like an 1/8 inch off this whole stretch and try to keep it as straight as we can. And the whole thing should hopefully nest in better. And if we can get it a little bit closer, where this lines up, that lines up, and things look better, then I think it's time to put the hood and the fenders on. But we're not quite there yet. I think we need to, realistically, we may have a whole 1/4 inch to take out of there yet, but we don't want to get aggressive. So we're gonna go an 1/8 inch and try that. All right, friends, here's where we are. We're not filming all of this because it's a lot of us just pushing and pulling. And this side we think is relatively close. This is sitting a little high here, but the shape is slightly different. Otherwise, most things on this side, the way these are fitting, is close. So before we go any further here, we're gonna put a hood and a fender on and just verify. We think the whole thing may need to go like an 1/8 of an inch further in, but we can't, we're too nervous to go any further until we verify that. On this side, we have a bit of a gap at the top and we're tight on the bottom. That hole is close to center there. And we need, this piece needs to go a little bit farther that way. So I think we're gonna take the cutoff disc, and because right now this is sliding over top of the stock piece. And we're just gonna cut through all of them right there, and then take it apart, clean both up, put it back on, and that should give us a butt joint that we can connect there. And then we'll put it back on and try again. Okay, so the front clip is closer, and we're to the point where we're wondering if in the original car here, the curve seems to be nice, but all of a sudden it drops off right here. We're wondering if this got mushed down by the previous owner. Kind of seems like this curve is really nice to about right there. But I don't think we're there yet, but we're close enough that we're gonna try to put a hood on and see what we learn from that, and then maybe put a couple fenders on and just see if we gotta go a lot farther or if we're getting close. The hood is on, and we slid it all the way forward on the brackets, which gives us a huge gap in the back. And it's not awful, but we are not there yet. Dale and I were just saying that this is the point at which we need to be really careful not to hurry. So we've got too large of a gap all the way down to here, and then it actually fits the front clip kind of nicely. So those curves are not quite matched to each other yet. And then this side, we've got a really large gap the whole way down. Except for we're hitting down here on both the driver and the passenger side, which I don't know, maybe the front clip's got to go farther in yet. Might have to go down a little bit, although we're already on those grommets on that, these grommets here, so this doesn't really want to go down further. We also don't know, this is the hood that was on Dale's car. That's the hood that was on the parts beetle. We don't know what shape the hood was in terms of bent or curves at all. So we're gonna pull it back off and throw the parts hood on just for grins to see if they both fit the same. So now we have the hood from the Merriman Parts Beetle on. Dale, you want to shut it?
Yeah.
What did we learn about how this one fits? Does it fit the same or different?
You know, it is definitely different. It fits a lot nicer in many ways. Certainly not a perfect fit.
No.
But the other one, I know it has stamped on it. The hood that I had Mexico stamped on it. Now, I don't know when it was made. It might have been a reproduction or a replacement one that was 40 years old. But this appears to be an original German 64 hood, which should fit a 66 just fine.
So we are, we're getting closer. Our gaps aren't quite right yet. So I think this needs to go back a little further. So we're gonna cut this tab overlap because that's forcing it to sit funny. And then I think we're gonna take about another 1/8 of an inch off of this side. On this side, we have a really large gap here, and our joint between the two kind of has a gap down here, and it's overlapping a touch there. So we're gonna clean this up. I'm gonna remove about 1/8 of an inch from there to there, and a little bit in the back. And then we're gonna put it back together and try it again. But I think this does make us lean towards using the 64 hood instead of the 66. It does need a little bit more body work. It's got a few more ripples in it, but I think the curve of it is better. The curve of the other one might have been off. So we're gonna lift the hood up, take the clip off, and do it all again. Here's where we're ending for the night. We haven't videoed in about an hour. Excuse me, Dale. Because we were getting frustrated and a little bit tired, and we're ready to call it for a night. We got one more night this week. We'll see how far we get. But we did end up on a really good note on this side. If you look at your hood to body gap, it looks pretty nice the whole way. Got a little bit of an open gap here that will get filled by that fender welting, but basically we thought we had cut a whole section out of here and change it, and just taking our time and being patient and pounding on it with a hammer to massage it in the direction we need it to go. We ended up doing a little bit of bending in here to push that up and over a little bit. We still may need to do a relief cut here to get this plane to match that plane, but we'll verify that when we do final welding. We have a large gap here. I'll have to decide whether a little piece will fit in there or whether we'll put a copper plate behind it and weld it. Leaning towards that at this point. This side is in a similar situation. The gap is larger than I like, but not huge. So Thursday, we're gonna work on just massaging this edge to see if we can get that to line up the way we want. And we need to fit the apron on. And then we may be ready to tack weld it in place. So that's where we're calling it a wrap for the night before we make things worse by pushing on too hard when we're tired. See you in 2 days. Yeah. Or a moment.
Or in a moment.
Like,
exactly. Why don't we just watch the videos instead of making them?
It's so much less work just to watch the videos. All right. See you. Have a good night. Hello, Third Stall. It is Thursday night, and Dale and I are back at it again. It is a beautiful day in Michigan. Dale decided it was getting too warm, so he's starting to strip down in the third stall. We've been out here for an hour and a half tinkering around and been working hard on the passenger side, and I'm really excited about how that's turning out. So we're going to show you that and some of how we measured it, and then we're going to dive into the driver's side and get to work on that. Let me flip the camera around. So here is the passenger side. The fender is on. If you look at the fender gap coming along here, gets a little bit wider there. There's our joint, a little bit wider, then tightens up again. But overall, that is well within the margin of error that will be covered by the fender welting. The other thing is that we have a lot of work to do to this fender yet. So that's one of the things that we've checked, is that gap. The second thing that we've been watching is this plane. Is this plane here carried through onto this front clip piece that we put in? And if you look kind of right here, come on, focus. If you look right there, we're feeling pretty good about that plane. The next thing is this joint and how this lines up. And it's not perfect, but it's close. So that can be massaged in. We did tack weld it here and put a tack weld down there. So this is effectively held in place by those tack welds right now. So matching it to the fender, we know the fenders need some work yet. So we're just using them as a guide, but we want it to be close to the fender and follow that curve. The other thing that we're doing is we want it to mate to the hood well. And we are really happy with this gap, kind of all the way down. You can see it even better when the fender is off. So that's another piece. This was quite low originally, so we did a lot of pulling it up and then driving this line over this way to get it to mate with the fender. The last piece we did is drop the gas tank in, because we want to make sure that the gas tank is dropping into the hole, that the bolt holes that mount it, the clips that mount it, are accessible. Previously, you can see that mounting bolt there and that mounting bolt there. Previously, this thing was, if you remember, if you watched the original video, this was turned so far down that there was a giant gap through here. It was a lower gap, wasn't it? But yeah, also it was kind of forward and down. Forward and down.
Yeah, you had a 1/2 inch like hole. You could just look down in through and see the front beam. So yeah, now obviously that's all set, and the gapping for the hood, I mean, it was just a breeze blowing into the car, because you could stick your hand literally with the hood closed. You could stick your hand underneath it into the trunk. That's how bad it was.
The other
so my car's never looked better.
Never looked better. The other piece that's interesting is you can see, it's a little bit hard to see, but the steering box is there. We kind of expected it to be centered, but it's a little bit off center, but it fits in nicely. I can fit my finger all the way around here. On the original clip, which is sitting over here, they had to take and hack that open in order to get it to clear the steering box. So that's another point for us, or another data point that makes us feel like overall we're in pretty good shape. The last piece is we got to put the front apron in yet. See if you can see this, but if you look all the way across, you can see the flashlight shining through. So this front fender to the front clip does clear behind the hood, which is where the apron should go. So we're optimistically getting hopeful, and now we're gonna work on this side and try to get the same thing done there. So here are our challenges on this side. We have pretty big gap between the fender and the front of the car. So it needs to come out this way. We're kind of lined up there. In here, we have a huge gap. So this is diving down here, which is confirmed when we shut the hood. So we have a very nice gap all the way along till right about here. Suddenly our gap starts to grow like crazy. And then we hit the new front clip and the gap stays pretty nice the rest of the way. So we need to figure out how to get this part of the car to match the hood. Don't know how we're gonna do it yet. That's what we're working on. Here's the plan. We're gonna do a cut right along on this joint, probably on the top of it, but right up against this radius. We're gonna cut all the way back to at least there. And that will free this plane right here, and it will come up and we can get it to match this one. That will give us the curve across the top that we want. At the same time, we can pull this edge away, which will help with this gap. And it's gonna leave a big long pie-shaped gap in here that either we will be able to weld shut or we'll have to fill somehow. But we're thinking at this point, our best bet is to make a long cut here because there's just no way to get this to come up the way that we need it to. And I think that that's the reason for that is because of damage that happened to the car years ago and the way that they repaired it. So, time to cut. All right, so we made the cut. Now we just gotta flex this guy up. To match the curve of the hood. Better. Surprisingly, it has a lot of spring and wants to go right back down. All right, we're gonna keep scratching our heads for a little bit. On this side, we ended up tacking in the, I don't know what this brace is for the gas tank, because we got this where we want it to be. The hole is nice and concentric. It's flush on the top and the bottom. We've got our holes drilled with a weld through primer. And so we want to tack that in place. That will help firm everything up here. So then as we work on bending this, it'll kind of, this will help hold things in place and keep it a little easier to bend things. It's not a big tack, but it'll hold. So we're getting closer. We're happy with the way, with this curve, the way it fits the hood. We're content with this gap. How we got there, because this was low, was we basically took this S curve and straightened it out a little bit by taking a heel dolly and holding hard against that while pounding with a hammer on the other end of that, and basically straightened this out a bit, which drove this up. So now our challenge is we need to take this surface and meld it or get it in line with this here, and then figure out what we need to do to fill all of this gap. So we're by no means out of the woods yet, but I think we're one step closer. This is good. And this is good back here. We just need to work on this spot in the middle. Getting closer. Just as quick as that. The reason we cut back so far is we're getting the curve was going down, and then when we started to bend it, it went down and then curved back up. So there's actually like, you can see the joint. So if we went back this far, hopefully this will give us a nice, smooth, even curve the whole way. I think our next job, Dale, might be to tack this. If we get this the way we want it.
Yeah, let's try placing that and see that we like the curve, the gap with the hood before we tack it though.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Now let's get a clamp.
So this is the last piece we want to test fit before we make the front clip permanent or relatively
It's gonna be hard
permanent.
to shut if I put a clamp in there.
Yeah. Oh, good idea.
All of them.
All right, so we have the apron just clamped in. We want to see how, whether there's a big ugly gap. Oh, Dale.
Yeah.
I'm sounding so excited like it's the first time.
I've
Like,
never
we
seen
didn't-
that. Okay.
We didn't just look at it 10 seconds ago and then go, oh, that's good. Let's videotape it. But we're really happy with that. I mean, the gasket will sit in there and fill that, but it looks that way on both sides.
Yep.
This fender's flapping in the breeze yet, but that means I think we have the front clip where we want it.
Yeah.
Now we just got to make it line up. Over there, the nemesis side.
Anemone. Don't hurt yourself. All right, so we're trying to make double time here. It is our last time for the summer, and we've got that cut, and we've got a screwdriver in there to kind of set the gap because of that cut flange is really flexible. So Doug's just going to tack weld it in a couple of spots to kind of hold it, and
What I'm gonna do is accidentally weld the hood to the fender.
yeah, that was my big suggestion was don't weld the hood to the fender. I may have seen Doug weld tools to things before, so let's see if the hood opens.
Up.
Yeah, right. Hooray! All right, so we're trying to get a couple of tack welds to set this gap, and then we'll figure out what to do with
We
it.
pushed our screwdriver in here and we felt how far it went before it went tight. And then we just set that same distance there to give us our gap there. So we could do that again here. So if I know the screwdriver goes in that far, right there's where my gap is right. So now I can put a tack weld there. Or I can miss.
All right, it's coming along, and we did get the fender back on, and the gapping where the fender beading or welting goes, that it's all looking good. So again, it's just trying to get this mess here.
The gap gets a little small right there, so I don't know if we'll... So now the challenge is we have a tack weld here and we have a little bit of an arc there. So as I try to push this down, either the steel has to compress or it will push things out, or I need to cut this, then tack weld it and weld this, which I think is what we need to do, Dale.
That makes sense.
So we'll keep getting it where we want, working our way across.
All right, let's do that maybe off camera to keep ourselves moving.
Yes, clock keeps moving on us. All right, I'm gonna cut that.
All right, so we, you wanna put the hood down? We've got all of this tacked in, and ooh, isn't that nice? We've got a nice gap. Again, ignore the giant hole, but we've got a gap right along, I don't know how well it's gonna show up, but really a nice gap all along here for the top, in between where the gasket's gonna go and the hood. So now our focus is how do we fill this hole? You know, just a cut here, but it gets wider and wider, of course, as we go. So clever idea. We'll see, at least, you know, genius is the moment when you thought of an idea and didn't figure out yet why it won't work. We're gonna put the copper pipe in underneath here. And realistically, what's under this ledge is, unless you climbed inside and looked under, you're not gonna see whatever that weld is. So we just want it good and strong. And so we're gonna throw that in there and use that as our copper backing, because you can't get a flat backing plate underneath this corner. So we'll do that along, and we'll see what happens. A little trickier once you get here, but
I think that will work up into this area. When we get into this large gap here, we may need to cut a patch and put it in. We got to figure that out yet. But we're gonna start here, this end, and see how far we go.
significant work. Always hard to stop because summer is here, and that's just kind of where we are. We'll be definitely picking up in the fall, and we know what we need to do. But what we ended up with is on the driver's side, which was always the problem every time we did anything, rear or the front. When you shut the hood now, we have a nice gap. And Doug's got this all filled in with weld. It's got to be ground and, get looking pretty. We'll need to fill in all of this, of course, but we're to the point now where we've got the front clip welded in. We're committed to where it is, and all signs point to it's the right spot. And I'll do some of that grinding, this summer, and back at it to finish out the front clip when we are back in the fall. I plan this summer to take it to a couple of painters that have said that they are okay with doing something like this, and see what they say I should do and what they might charge. And again, I hate to predict too much because I'm bad at predicting the future. But the goal would be that we'd be headed to paint a year from now. So that's really, that would be great if we had it going to paint, and the chassis we're working on, that's all part of where we're headed. So still more body work, but this is exciting in the sense that it's the original stuff that we were trying to do. So as we were fixing things here in the front, it's fixing stuff that I totally noticed of that we brought up earlier in the video. So to have stuff looking this good with this front clip, it was pretty early on in using the car when I first bought it in 2013 that I realized this has been hit and put together poorly.
Yeah.
But whoever did it, they saved the car. And so I really don't want to beat up the previous owner. They did a nice job of saving a little car that I could now have, and with a lot of help from Third Stall.
This has been a great learning experience for both of us. I've never welded this much sheet metal in my life, and and our Our joke is I'm a guy with a welder. I'm not a welder. And so you can see that I can see that this line isn't a perfectly smooth curve, and Dale has a lot more grinding to do here than maybe he should have to if I was better, but I think that it'll clean up. We'll get this plain ground with some nice radiuses in there, and then we're gonna trust a body guy to do the rest. We've not sent a car to the body shop before, so if anybody has experience with how do you interview body people, where should we leave off? Where should they start? Should we check references? How do you determine what's a fair price for paint? We know it's not going to be cheap. We're okay with that. But we also don't want to spend 10 grand more than we need to, and we want to get a good paint job when we're done. All right, we'll wrap this up. All right, that's gonna wrap up this episode 37, I think. I never remember.
Where we end now.
Where we end. And we're heading on summer break, so thanks for following along with this. We'll update you the next time we get a chance to work on it, or if we get any information over the summer. But thanks for being on this journey with us. We appreciate it. To family and friends out there, say hi to your relatives.
You know, I got 2 brothers who are watching it, and maybe some other siblings as well. I'm a pile of 6 of us that are fam, and then New York fam. I know that my great nephew Wyatt's been watching before he goes to school. So
hi, Wyatt.
There you go.
Hello from Michigan. And hey, Mark Whitty, hope you're doing well. We should go out for a burger and a beer sometime. So have a good evening. Thanks, folks, for being part of this. Go out and find somebody who needs a little love and do something nice for them. Have a good day. Bye.